Chapter 37. Meanwhile, Jacob had settled down where his father had lived, the land of Canaan. Joseph and his brothers. This is the story of Jacob. The story continues with Joseph, 17 years old at the time, helping out his brothers in herding the flocks. These were his half-brothers actually, the sons of his father's wives Bilhah and Zilpah. And Joseph brought his father bad reports on them. Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons because he was the child of his old age, and he made him an elaborately embroidered coat. When his brothers realized that their father loved him more than them, they grew to hate him. They wouldn't even speak to him. Joseph had a dream. When he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said, "Listen to this dream I had. We were all out in the field gathering bundles of wheat. All of a sudden, my bundle stood straight up, and your bundle circled around it and bowed down to mine." His brothers said, "So, you're going to rule us? You're going to boss us around?" And they hated him more than ever because of his dreams and the way he talked. He had another dream and told this one also to his brothers. "I dreamed another dream. The sun and moon and 11 stars bowed down to me." When he told it to his father and brothers, his father reprimanded him. "What's with all this dreaming? Am I and your mother and your brothers all supposed to bow down to you?" Now his brothers were really jealous, but his father brooded over the whole business. His brothers had gone off to Shechem, where they were pasturing their father's flocks. Israel said to Joseph, "Your brothers are with flocks in Shechem. Come, I want to send you to them." Joseph said, "I'm ready." He said, "Go and see how your brothers and the flocks are doing, and bring me back a report." He sent him off from the valley of Hebron to Shechem. A man met him as he was wandering through the fields and asked him, "What are you looking for?" "I'm trying to find my brothers. Do you have any idea where they are grazing their flocks?" The man said, "They've left here, but I overheard them say, 'Let's go to Dothan.'" So Joseph took off, tracked his brothers down, and found them in Dothan. They spotted him off in the distance. By the time he got to them, they had cooked up a plot to kill him. The brothers were saying, "Here comes that dreamer. Let's kill him and throw him into one of these old cisterns. We can say that a vicious animal ate him up. We'll see what his dreams amount to." Reuben heard the brothers talking and intervened to save him. "We're not going to kill him. No murder. Go ahead and throw him in this cistern out here in the wild, but don't hurt him." Reuben planned to go back later and get him out and take him back to his father. When Joseph reached his brothers, they ripped off the fancy coat he was wearing, grabbed him, and threw him into a cistern. The cistern was dry. There wasn't any water in it. Then they sat down to eat their supper. Looking up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites on their way from Gilead, their camels loaded with spices, ointments, and perfumes to sell in Egypt. Judah said, "Brothers, what are we going to get out of killing our brother and concealing the evidence? Let's sell him to the Ishmaelites, but let's not kill him. He is, after all, our brother, our own flesh and blood." His brothers agreed. By that time, the Midianite traders were passing by. His brothers pulled Joseph out of the cistern and sold him for 20 pieces of silver to the Ishmaelites, who took Joseph with them down to Egypt. Later, Reuben came back and went to the cistern. No Joseph. He ripped his clothes in despair. Beside himself, he went to his brothers. "The boy's gone. What am I going to do?" They took Joseph's coat, butchered a goat, and dipped the coat in the blood. They took the fancy coat back to their father and said, "We found this. Look it over. Do you think this is your son's coat?" He recognized it at once. "My son's coat. A wild animal has eaten him. Joseph, torn limb from limb." Jacob tore his clothes in grief, dressed in rough burlap, and mourned his son a long, long time. His sons and daughters tried to comfort him, but he refused their comfort. "I'll go to the grave mourning my son." Oh, how his father wept for him. In Egypt, the Midianites sold Joseph to Potiphar, one of Pharaoh's officials, manager of his household affairs. Chapter 39. After Joseph had been taken to Egypt by the Ishmaelites, Potiphar, an Egyptian, one of Pharaoh's officials and the manager of his household, bought him from them. As it turned out, God was with Joseph, and things went very well with him. He ended up living in the home of his Egyptian master. His master recognized that God was with him, saw that God was working for good in everything he did. He became very fond of Joseph and made him his personal aide. He put him in charge of all his personal affairs, turning everything over to him. From that moment on, God blessed the home of the Egyptian, all because of Joseph. The blessing of God spread over everything he owned, at home and in the fields, and all Potiphar had to concern himself with was eating 3 meals a day. Joseph was a strikingly handsome man. As time went on, his master's wife became infatuated with Joseph, and one day said, "Sleep with me." He wouldn't do it. He said to his master's wife, "Look, with me here, my master doesn't give a second thought to anything that goes on here. He's put me in charge of everything he owns. He treats me as an equal. The only thing he hasn't turned over to me is you. You're his wife, after all. How could I violate his trust and sin against God?" She pestered him day after day after day, but he stood his ground. He refused to go to bed with her. On one of these days, he came to the house to do his work, and none of the household servants happened to be there. She grabbed him by his cloak, saying, "Sleep with me." He left his coat in her hand and ran out of the house. When she realized that he had left his coat in her hand and run outside, she called to her house servants, "Look, this Hebrew shows up, and before you know it, he's trying to seduce us. He tried to make love to me, but I yelled as loud as I could. With all my yelling and screaming, he left his coat beside me here and ran outside." She kept his coat right there until his master came home. She told him the same story. She said, "The Hebrew slave, the one you brought to us, came after me and tried to use me for his plaything. When I yelled and screamed, he left his coat with me and ran outside." When his master heard his wife's story, telling him, "These are the things your slave did to me," he was furious. Joseph's master took him and threw him into the jail where the king's prisoners were locked up. But there in jail, God was still with Joseph. He reached out in kindness to him. He put him on good terms with the head jailer. The head jailer put Joseph in charge of all the prisoners. He ended up managing the whole operation. The head jailer gave Joseph free rein, never even checked on him, because God was with him. Whatever he did, God made sure it worked out for the best. Chapter 40. As time went on, it happened that the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt crossed their master, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was furious with his 2 officials, the head cupbearer and the head baker, and put them in custody under the captain of the guard. It was the same jail where Joseph was held. The captain of the guard assigned Joseph to see to their needs. After they had been in custody for a while, the king's cupbearer and baker, while being held in the jail, both had a dream on the same night, each dream having its own meaning. When Joseph arrived in the morning, he noticed that they were feeling low. So he asked them, the 2 officials of Pharaoh, who had been thrown into jail with him, "What's wrong? Why the long faces?" They said, "We dreamed dreams and there's no one to interpret them." Joseph said, "Don't interpretations come from God? Tell me the dreams." First, the head cupbearer told his dream to Joseph. "In my dream, there was a vine in front of me with 3 branches on it. It budded, and the clusters ripened into grapes. I was holding Pharaoh's cup. I took the grapes, squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and gave the cup to Pharaoh." Joseph said, "Here's the meaning. The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will get you out of here and put you back to your old work. You'll be giving Pharaoh his cup just as you used to do when you were his cupbearer. Only remember me when things are going well with you again. Tell Pharaoh about me and get me out of this place. I was kidnapped from the land of the Hebrews. Since I've been here, I've done nothing to deserve being put in this hole." When the head baker saw how well Joseph's interpretation turned out, he spoke up. "My dream went like this. I saw 3 wicker baskets on my head. The top basket had assorted pastries from the bakery, and birds were picking at them from the basket on my head." Joseph said, This is the interpretation. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will take off your head, impale you on a post, and the birds will pick your bones clean. And sure enough, on the 3rd day, it was Pharaoh's birthday, and he threw a feast for all his servants. He set the head cupbearer and the head baker in places of honor in the presence of all the guests. Then he restored the head cupbearer to his cupbearing post. He handed Pharaoh his cup just as before, and then he impaled the head baker on a post, following Joseph's interpretations exactly. But the head cupbearer never gave Joseph another thought. He forgot all about him. Chapter 41. 2 years passed, and Pharaoh had a dream. He was standing by the Nile River. 7 cows came up out of the Nile, all shimmering with health, and grazed on the marsh grass. Then 7 other cows, all skin and bones, came up out of the river after them, and stood by them on the bank of the Nile. The skinny cows ate the 7 healthy cows. Then Pharaoh woke up. He went back to sleep and dreamed a second time. 7 ears of grain, full-bodied and lush, grew out of a single stalk. Then 7 more ears grew up, but these were thin and dried out by the east wind. The thin ears swallowed up the full, healthy ears. Then Pharaoh woke up. Another dream. When morning came, he was upset. He sent for all the magicians and sages of Egypt. Pharaoh told them his dreams, but they couldn't interpret them to him. The head cupbearer then spoke up and said to Pharaoh, "I just now remembered something. I'm sorry. I should have told you this long ago. Once, when Pharaoh got angry with his servants, he locked me and the head baker in the house of the captain of the guard. We both had dreams on the same night, each dream with its own meaning. It so happened that there was a young Hebrew slave there with us. He belonged to the captain of the guard. We told him our dreams, and he interpreted them for us, each dream separately. Things turned out just as he interpreted. I was returned to my position, and the head baker was impaled. Pharaoh at once sent for Joseph. They brought him on the run from the jail cell. He cut his hair, put on clean clothes, and came to Pharaoh. "I dreamed a dream," Pharaoh told Joseph. "Nobody can interpret it. But I've heard that just by hearing a dream, you can interpret it." Joseph answered, "Not I, but God. God will set Pharaoh's mind at ease." Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "In my dream, I was standing on the bank of the Nile. 7 cows, shimmering with health, came up out of the river and grazed on the marsh grass. On their heels, 7 more cows, all skin and bones, came up. I've never seen uglier cows anywhere in Egypt. Then the 7 skinny, ugly cows ate up the first 7 healthy cows. But you couldn't tell by looking. After eating them up, they were just as skinny and ugly as before. Then I woke up. In my second dream, I saw 7 ears of grain, full-bodied and lush, growing out of a single stalk, and right behind them, 7 other ears, shriveled, thin, and dried out by the east wind. And the thin ears swallowed up the full ears. I've told all this to the magicians, but they can't figure it out." Joseph said to Pharaoh, "Pharaoh's 2 dreams both mean the same thing. God is telling Pharaoh what he is going to do. The 7 healthy cows are 7 years, and the 7 healthy ears of grain are 7 years. They're the same dream. The 7 sick and ugly cows that followed them up are 7 years, and the 7 scrawny ears of grain dried out by the east wind are the same, 7 years of famine. The meaning is what I said earlier. God is letting Pharaoh in on what he's going to do. 7 years of plenty are on their way throughout Egypt, but on their heels will come 7 years of famine, leaving no trace of the Egyptian plenty. As the country is emptied by famine, there won't be even a scrap left of the previous plenty. The famine will be total. The fact that Pharaoh dreamed the same dream twice emphasizes God's determination to do this, and do it soon. So, Pharaoh needs to look for a wise and experienced man and put him in charge of the country. Then, Pharaoh needs to appoint managers throughout the country of Egypt to organize it during the years of plenty. Their job will be to collect all the food produced in the good years ahead and stockpile the grain under Pharaoh's authority, storing it in the towns for food. This grain will be held back to be used later during the 7 years of famine that are coming on Egypt. This way, the country won't be devastated by the famine. This seemed like a good idea to Pharaoh and his officials. Then Pharaoh said to his officials, "Isn't this the man we need? Or are we going to find anyone else who has God's spirit in him like this?" So Pharaoh said to Joseph, "You're the man for us. God has given you the inside story. No one is as qualified as you in experience and wisdom. From now on, you're in charge of my affairs. All my people will report to you. Only as king will I be over you." So Pharaoh commissioned Joseph, "I'm putting you in charge of the entire country of Egypt." Then Pharaoh removed his signet ring from his finger and slipped it on Joseph's hand. He outfitted him in robes of the best linen and put a gold chain around his neck. He put the second-in-command chariot at his disposal, and as he rode, people shouted, "Bravo!" Joseph was in charge of the entire country of Egypt. Pharaoh told Joseph, "I am Pharaoh, but no one in Egypt will make a single move without your stamp of approval." Then Pharaoh gave Joseph an Egyptian name, Zaphenath-Paneah, God speaks and he lives. He also gave him an Egyptian wife, Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, the priest of On, Heliopolis. And Joseph took up his duties over the land of Egypt. Joseph was 30 years old when he went to work for Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. As soon as Joseph left Pharaoh's presence, he began his work in Egypt. During the next 7 years of plenty, the land produced bumper crops. Joseph gathered up the food of the 7 good years in Egypt and stored the food in cities. In each city, he stockpiled surplus from the surrounding fields. Joseph collected so much grain, it was like the sand of the ocean, that he finally quit keeping track. Joseph had 2 sons born to him before the years of famine came. Asenath, daughter of Potiphera, the priest of On, was their mother. Joseph named the firstborn Manasseh, forget, saying, "God made me forget all my hardships in my parental home." He named his second son Ephraim, double prosperity, saying, "God has prospered me in the land of my sorrow." Then Egypt's 7 good years came to an end, and the 7 years of famine arrived, just as Joseph had said. All countries experienced famine. Egypt was the only country that had bread. When the famine spread throughout Egypt, the people called out in distress to Pharaoh, calling for bread. He told the Egyptians, "Go to Joseph, do what he tells you." As the famine got worse all over the country, Joseph opened the storehouses and sold emergency supplies to the Egyptians. The famine was very bad. Soon, the whole world was coming to buy supplies from Joseph. The famine was bad all over. Chapter 42. When Jacob learned that there was food in Egypt, he said to his sons, "Why do you sit around here and look at one another? I've heard that there is food in Egypt. Go down there and buy some so that we can survive and not starve to death." 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to Egypt to get food. Jacob didn't send Joseph's brother Benjamin with them. He was afraid that something bad might happen to him. So Israel's sons joined everyone else that was going to Egypt to buy food. For Canaan, too, was hit hard by the famine. Joseph was running the country. He was the one who gave out rations to all the people. When Joseph's brothers arrived, they treated him with honor, bowing to him. Joseph recognized them immediately, but treated them as strangers and spoke roughly to them. He said, "Where do you come from?" "From Canaan," they said. "We've come to buy food." Joseph knew who they were, but they didn't know who he was. Joseph, remembering the dreams he had dreamed of them, said, "You're spies. You've come to look for our weak spots." "No, master," they said. "We've only come to buy food. We're all the sons of the same man. We're honest men. We'd never think of spying." He said, "No, you're spies. You've come to look for our weak spots." They said, "There were 12 of us brothers, sons of the same father in the country of Canaan. The youngest is with our father, and one is no more." But Joseph said, "It's just as I said, you're spies. This is how I'll test you. As Pharaoh lives, you're not going to leave this place until your younger brother comes here. Send one of you to get your brother while the rest of you stay here in jail. We'll see if you're telling the truth or not. As Pharaoh lives, I say you're spies." Then he threw them into jail for 3 days. On the third day, Joseph spoke to them. "Do this and you'll live. I'm a God-fearing man. If you're as honest as you say you are, one of your brothers will stay here in jail while the rest of you take the food back to your hungry families. But you have to bring your youngest brother back to me, confirming the truth of your speech, and not one of you will die." They agreed. Then they started talking among themselves. "Now we're paying for what we did to our brother. We saw how terrified he was when he was begging us for mercy. We wouldn't listen to him, and now we're the ones in trouble." Reuben broke in. "Didn't I tell you, don't hurt the boy? But no, you wouldn't listen, and now we're paying for his murder." Joseph had been using an interpreter, so they didn't know that Joseph was understanding every word. Joseph turned away from them and cried. When he was able to speak again, he took Simeon and had him tied up, making a prisoner of him while they all watched. Then Joseph ordered that their sacks be filled with grain, that their money be put back in each sack, and that they be given rations for the road. That was all done for them. They loaded their food supplies on their donkeys and set off. When they stopped for the night, one of them opened his sack to get food for his donkey. There, at the mouth of his bag, was his money. He called out to his brothers, "My money has been returned. It's right here in my bag." They were puzzled and frightened. What's God doing to us? When they got back to their father, Jacob, back in the land of Canaan, they told him everything that had happened, saying, "The man who runs the country spoke to us roughly and accused us of being spies. We told him, 'We are honest men and in no way spies. There were 12 of us brothers, sons of one father. One is gone, and the youngest is with our father in Canaan.' But the master of the country said, 'Leave one of your brothers with me. Take food for your starving families and go. Bring your youngest brother back to me, proving that you're honest men and not spies. And then I'll give your brother back to you, and you'll be free to come and go in this country.' As they were emptying their food sacks, each man came on his purse of money. On seeing their money, they and their father were upset. Their father said to them, 'You're taking everything I've got. Joseph's gone, Simeon's gone, and now you want to take Benjamin. If you have your way, I'll be left with nothing.' Reuben spoke up. 'I'll put my 2 sons in your hands as hostages. If I don't bring Benjamin back, you can kill them. Trust me with Benjamin, I'll bring him back.' But Jacob refused. 'My son will not go down with you. His brother is dead and he is all I have left. If something bad happens to him on the road, you'll put my gray, sorrowing head in the grave.'" Chapter 43. The famine got worse. When they had eaten all the food they had brought back from Egypt, their father said, "Go back and get some more food." But Judah said, "The man warned us most emphatically, 'You won't so much as see my face if you don't have your brother with you. If you're ready to release our brother to go with us, we'll go down and get you food. But if you're not ready, we aren't going. What would be the use? The man told us, 'You won't so much as see my face if you don't have your brother with you.'" Israel said, "Why are you making my life so difficult? Why did you ever tell the man you had another brother?" They said, "The man pressed us hard, asking pointed questions about our family. 'Is your father alive? Do you have another brother?' So we answered his questions. How did we know that he'd say, 'Bring your brother here'?" Judah pushed his father, Israel. "Let the boy go. I'll take charge of him. Let us go and be on our way. If we don't get going, we're all going to starve to death. We and you and our children too. I'll take full responsibility for his safety. It's my life on the line for his. If I don't bring him back safe and sound, I'm the guilty one. I'll take all the blame. If we had gone ahead in the first place, instead of procrastinating like this, We could have been there and back twice over. Their father Israel gave in. If it has to be, it has to be. But do this. Stuff your packs with the finest products from the land you can find and take them to the man as gifts. Some balm and honey, some spices and perfumes, some pistachios and almonds. And take plenty of money. Pay back double what was returned to your sacks. That might have been a mistake. Take your brother and get going. Go back to the man, and may the strong God give you grace in that man's eyes, so let us send back your other brother along with Benjamin. For me, nothing's left. I've lost everything. The men took the gifts, double the money, and Benjamin. They lost no time in getting to Egypt and meeting Joseph. When Joseph saw they had Benjamin with them, he told his house steward, "Take these men into the house and make them at home. Butcher an animal and prepare a meal. These men are going to eat with me at noon." The steward did what Joseph had said and took them inside. But they became anxious when they were brought into Joseph's home, thinking, "It's the money. He thinks we ran off with the money on our first trip down here. And now he's got us where he wants us. He's going to turn us into slaves and confiscate our donkeys." So they went up to Joseph's house steward and talked to him in the doorway. They said, "Listen, master, we came down here one other time to buy food. On our way home, the first night out, we opened our bags and found our money at the mouth of the bag, the exact amount we'd paid. We brought it all back and have plenty more to buy more food with. We have no idea who put the money in our bags." The steward said, "Everything's in order. Don't worry. Your God and the God of your father must have given you a bonus. I was paid in full." And with that, he presented Simeon to them. He then took them inside Joseph's house and made them comfortable, gave them water to wash their feet, and saw to the feeding of their donkeys. The brothers spread out their gifts as they waited for Joseph to show up at noon. They had been told that they were to have dinner with him. When Joseph got home, they presented him with the gifts they had brought and bowed respectfully before him. Joseph welcomed them and said, "And your old father whom you mentioned to me, how is he? Is he still alive?" They said, "Yes, your servant our father is quite well, very much alive." And they again bowed respectfully before him. Then Joseph picked out his brother Benjamin, his own mother's son. He asked, "And is this your youngest brother that you told me about?" Then he said, "God be gracious to you, my son." Deeply moved on seeing his brother and about to burst into tears, Joseph hurried out into another room and had a good cry. Then he washed his face, got a grip on himself, and said, "Let's eat." Joseph was served at his private table, the brothers off by themselves and the Egyptians off by themselves. Egyptians won't eat at the same table with Hebrews. It's repulsive to them. The brothers were seated facing Joseph, arranged in order of their age, from the oldest to the youngest. They looked at one another, wide-eyed, wondering what would happen next. When the brothers' plates were served from Joseph's table, Benjamin's plate came piled high, far more so than his brothers'. And so the brothers feasted with Joseph, drinking freely. Chapter 44. Joseph ordered his house steward, "Fill the men's bags with food, all they can carry, and replace each one's money at the top of the bag. Then put my chalice, my silver chalice, in the top of the bag of the youngest, along with the money for his food." He did as Joseph ordered. At break of day, the men were sent off with their donkeys. They were barely out of the city when Joseph said to his house steward, "Run after them. When you catch up with them, say, 'Why did you pay me back evil for good? This is the chalice my master drinks from. He also uses it for divination. This is outrageous.'" He caught up with them and repeated all this word for word. They said, "What is my master talking about? We would never do anything like that. Why, the money we found in our bags earlier, we brought back all the way from Canaan. Do you think we'd turn right around and steal it back from your master? If that chalice is found on any of us, he'll die, and the rest of us will be your master's slaves." The steward said, "Very well then, but we won't go that far. Whoever is found with the chalice will be my slave. The rest of you can go free." They outdid each other in putting their bags on the ground and opening them up for inspection. The steward searched their bags, going from oldest to youngest. The chalice showed up in Benjamin's bag. They ripped their clothes in despair, loaded up their donkeys, and went back to the city. Joseph was still at home when Judah and his brothers got back. They threw themselves down on the ground in front of him. Joseph accused them. "How can you have done this? You have to know that a man in my position would have discovered this." Judah, as spokesman for the brothers, said, "What can we say, Master? What is there to say? How can we prove our innocence? God is behind this, exposing how bad we are. We stand guilty before you and ready to be your slaves. We're all in this together, the rest of us as guilty as the one with the chalice." "I'd never do that to you," said Joseph. "Only the one involved with the chalice will be my slave. The rest of you are free to go back to your father." Judah came forward. He said, "Please, Master, can I say just one thing to you? Don't get angry. Don't think I'm presumptuous. You're the same as Pharaoh as far as I'm concerned. You, Master, asked us, do you have a father and a brother? And we answered honestly, we have a father who is old and a younger brother who was born to him in his old age. His brother is dead and he is the only son left from that mother. And his father loves him more than anything. Then you told us, bring him down here so I can see him. We told you, Master, that it was impossible. The boy can't leave his father. If he leaves, his father will die. And then you said, if your youngest brother doesn't come with you, you won't be allowed to see me. When we returned to our father, we told him everything you said to us. So when our father said, go back and buy some more food, we told him flatly, we can't. The only way we can go back is if our youngest brother is with us. We aren't allowed to even see the man if our youngest brother doesn't come with us. Your servant, my father, told us, you know very well that my wife gave me 2 sons. One turned up missing. I concluded that he'd been ripped to pieces. I've never seen him since. If you now go and take this one and something bad happens to him, you'll put my old, gray, grieving head in the grave for sure. And now, can't you see that if I show up before your servant, my father, without the boy, this son with whom his life is so bound up, the moment he realizes the boy is gone, he'll die on the spot. He'll die of grief, and we, your servants who are standing here before you, will have killed him. And that's not all. I got my father to release the boy to show him to you by promising, if I don't bring him back, I'll stand condemned before you, Father, all my life. So let me stay here as your slave, not this boy. Let the boy go back with his brothers. How can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? Oh, don't make me go back and watch my father die in grief. Chapter 45. Chapter 45. Joseph couldn't hold himself in any longer, keeping up a front before all his attendants. He cried out, "Leave! Clear out! Everyone, leave!" So there was no one with Joseph when he identified himself to his brothers. But his sobbing was so violent that the Egyptians couldn't help but hear him. The news was soon reported to Pharaoh's palace. Joseph spoke to his brothers. "I am Joseph. Is my father really still alive?" But his brothers couldn't say a word. They were speechless. They couldn't believe what they were hearing and seeing. "Come closer to me," Joseph said to his brothers. They came closer. "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. But don't feel badly. Don't blame yourselves for selling me. God was behind it. God sent me here ahead of you to save lives. There has been a famine in the land now for 2 years. The famine will continue for 5 more years, neither plowing nor harvesting. God sent me on ahead to pave the way and make sure there was a remnant in the land, to save your lives in an amazing act of deliverance. So you see, it wasn't you who sent me here, but God. He set me in place as a father to Pharaoh, put me in charge of his personal affairs, and made me ruler of all Egypt. Hurry back to my father. Tell him, your son Joseph says, I am master of all of Egypt. Come as fast as you can and join me here. I'll give you a place to live in Goshen where you'll be close to me. You, your children, your grandchildren, your flocks, your herds, and anything else you can think of. I'll take care of you there completely. There are still 5 more years of famine ahead. I'll make sure all your needs are taken care of, you and everyone connected with you. You won't want for a thing. Look at me. You can see for yourselves, and my brother Benjamin can see for himself that it's me, my own mouth, telling you all this. Tell my father all about the high position I hold in Egypt. Tell him everything you've seen here. But don't take all day. Hurry up and get my father down here. Then Joseph threw himself on his brother Benjamin's neck and wept. And Benjamin wept on his neck. He then kissed all his brothers and wept over them. Only then were his brothers able to talk with him. The story was reported in Pharaoh's palace. Joseph's brothers have come. It was good news to Pharaoh and all who worked with him. Pharaoh said to Joseph, tell your brothers, this is the plan. Load up your pack animals, go to Canaan, get your father and your families and bring them back here. I'll settle you on the best land in Egypt. You'll live off the fat of the land. Also tell them this, here's what I want you to do. Take wagons from Egypt to carry your little ones and your wives and load up your father and come back. Don't worry about having to leave things behind. The best in all of Egypt will be yours. And they did just that, the sons of Israel. Joseph gave them the wagons that Pharaoh had promised and food for the trip. He outfitted all the brothers in brand new clothes, but he gave Benjamin 300 pieces of silver and several suits of clothes. He sent his father these gifts: 10 donkeys loaded with Egypt's best products and another 10 donkeys loaded with grain and bread, provisions for his father's journey back. Then he sent his brothers off. As they left, he told them, take it easy on the journey. Try to get along with each other. They left Egypt and went back to their father Jacob in Canaan. When they told him, Joseph is still alive and he's the ruler over the whole land of Egypt, he went numb. He couldn't believe his ears. But the more they talked, telling him everything that Joseph had told them, and when he saw the wagons that Joseph had sent to carry him back, the blood started to flow again. Their father Jacob's spirit revived. Israel said, I've heard enough. My son Joseph is still alive. I've got to go and see him before I die. Chapter 46. So Israel set out on the journey with everything he owned. He arrived at Beersheba and worshiped, offering sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. God spoke to Israel in a vision that night. Jacob, Jacob. Yes, he said, I'm listening. God said, I am the God of your father. Don't be afraid of going down to Egypt. I'm going to make you a great nation there. I'll go with you down to Egypt. I'll also bring you back here. And when you die, Joseph will be with you. With his own hand, he'll close your eyes. Then Jacob left Beersheba. Israel's sons loaded their father and their little ones and their wives on the wagons Pharaoh had sent to carry him. They arrived in Egypt with the livestock and the wealth they had accumulated in Canaan. Jacob brought everyone in his family with him, sons and grandsons, daughters and granddaughters, everyone. These are the names of the Israelites, Jacob and his descendants, who went to Egypt. Reuben, Jacob's firstborn. Reuben's sons, Hanak, Palu, Hezron, and Carmi. Simeon's sons, Jemuel, Jamin, Ohad, Jachin, Zohar, and Shael, the son of a Canaanite woman. Levi's sons, Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. Judah's sons, Onan, Shelah, Perez, and Zerah. And Onan had already died in the land of Canaan. The sons of Perez were Hezron and Hamel. Issachar's sons, Tola, Hula, Jashub, and Shimron. Zebulun's sons, Sered, Elon, and Jaleel. These are the sons that Leah bore to Jacob in Paddan Aram. There was also his daughter Dinah. Altogether, sons and daughters, they numbered 33. Gad's sons, Zephon, Haggai, Shunai, Ezbon, Eri, Erodai, and Areli. Asher's sons, Imnah, Ishva, Ishvi, and Beriah. Also, their sisters Serah, and Beriah's sons, Heber, and Machir. These are the children that Zilpah, the maid that Laban gave to his daughter Leah, bore to Jacob, 16 of them. The sons of Jacob's wife Rachel were Joseph and Benjamin. Joseph was the father of 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, from his marriage to Asenath, daughter of Potipharah, priest of On. They were born to him in Egypt. Benjamin's sons were Bela, Becher, Ashbel, Ira, Naaman, Ehi, Rosh, Muppim, Huppim, and Ard. These are the children born to Jacob through Rachel, 14. Dan's son, Husham. Naphtali's sons, Jaziel, Guni, Jezer, and Shillem. These are the children born to Jacob through Bilhah, the maid Laban had given to his daughter Rachel, 7. Summing up, all those who went down to Egypt with Jacob, his own children, not counting his sons' wives, numbered 66. Counting in the 2 sons born to Joseph in Egypt, the members of Jacob's family who ended up in Egypt numbered 70. Jacob sent Judah on ahead to get directions to Goshen from Joseph. When they got to Goshen, Joseph gave orders for his chariot and went to Goshen to meet his father Israel. The moment Joseph saw him, he threw himself on his neck and wept. He wept a long time. Israel said to Joseph, "I'm ready to die. I've looked into your face. You are indeed alive." Joseph then spoke to his brothers and his father's family. "I'll go and tell Pharaoh, my brothers and my father's family, all of whom lived in Canaan, have come to me. The men are shepherds. They've always made their living by raising livestock. And they brought their flocks and herds with them, along with everything else they own. When Pharaoh calls you in and asks what kind of work you do, tell him, 'Your servants have always kept livestock for as long as we can remember. We and our parents also.' That way, he'll let you stay apart in the area of Goshen, for Egyptians look down on anyone who is a shepherd." Chapter 49. Jacob called his sons and said, "Gather around. I want to tell you what you can expect in the days to come. Come together. Listen, sons of Jacob. Listen to Israel, your father. Reuben, you're my firstborn, my strength, first proof of my manhood, at the top in honor and at the top in power. But like a bucket of water spilled, you'll be at the top no more. Because you climbed into your father's marriage bed, mounting that couch, and you defiled it. Simeon and Levi are 2 of a kind, ready to fight at the drop of a hat. I don't want anything to do with their vendettas, want no part in their bitter feuds. They kill men in fits of temper, slash oxen on a whim. A curse on their uncontrolled anger, on their indiscriminate wrath. I'll throw them out with the trash. I'll shred and scatter them like confetti throughout Israel. You, Judah, your brothers will praise you. Your fingers on your enemy's throat, while your brothers honor you. You're a lion's cub, Judah, home fresh from the kill, my son. Look at him, crouched like a lion, king of beasts. Who dares mess with him? The scepter shall not leave Judah. He'll keep a firm grip on the command staff until the ultimate ruler comes and the nations obey him. He'll tie up his donkey to the grapevine, his purebred prize to a sturdy branch. He will wash his shirt in wine and his cloak in the blood of grapes. His eyes will be darker than wine, his teeth whiter than milk. Zebulun settles down on the seashore. He's a safe harbor for ships, right alongside Sidon. Issachar is one tough donkey, crouching between the corrals. When he saw how good the place was, how pleasant the country, he gave up his freedom and went to work as a slave. Dan will handle matters of justice for his people. He will hold his own just fine among the tribes of Israel. Dan is only a small snake in the grass, a lethal serpent in ambush by the road when he strikes a horse in the heel and brings its huge rider crashing down. I wait in hope for your salvation, God. Gad will be attacked by bandits, but he will trip them up. Asher will become famous for rich foods, candies and sweets fit for kings. Naphtali is a deer running free that gives birth to lovely fawns. Joseph is a wild donkey by a spring, spirited donkeys on a hill. The archers with malice attacked, shooting their hate-tipped arrows, but he held steady under fire, his bow firm, his arms limber. With the backing of the champion of Jacob, the shepherd, the rock of Israel. The God of your father, may he help you. And may the strong God, may he give you his blessings. Blessings tumbling out of the skies. Blessings bursting up from the earth. Blessings of breasts and womb. May the blessings of your father exceed the blessings of the ancient mountains. Surpass the delights of the eternal hills. May they rest on the head of Joseph, on the brow of the one consecrated among his brothers. Benjamin is a ravenous wolf. All morning he gorges on his kill. At evening, divides up what's left over. All these are the tribes of Israel, the 12 tribes, and this is what their father said to them as he blessed them, blessing each one with his own special farewell blessing. Then he instructed them, I am about to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave which is in the field of Ephron the Hittite, the cave in the field of Machpelah, facing Mamre, in the land of Canaan, the field Abraham bought from Ephron the Hittite for a burial plot. Abraham and his wife Sarah were buried there. Isaac and his wife Rebekah were buried there. I also buried Leah there. The field and the cave were bought from the Hittites. Jacob finished instructing his sons, pulled his feet into bed, breathed his last, and was gathered to his people. Joseph is a wild donkey by a spring, spirited donkeys on a hill. The archers with malice attacked, shooting their hate-tipped arrows, but he held steady under fire, his bow firm, his arms limber. With the backing of the champion of Jacob, the shepherd, the rock of Israel. The God of your father, may he help you. And may the strong God, may he give you his blessings. Blessings tumbling out of the skies. Blessings bursting up from the earth. Blessings of breasts and womb. May the blessings of your father exceed the blessings of the ancient mountains. Surpass the delights of the eternal hills. May they rest on the head of Joseph, on the brow of the one consecrated among his brothers. Benjamin is a ravenous wolf.